Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second Inoko webinar. My name is I'm one of the co-founder of Inoko, and I will be the moderator this afternoon. So the topic of today is consumer-centric strategies for reducing Scope 3 emissions in the online grocery space. So a quick look maybe at today's agenda. I will introduce the panelists and the speakers. I will then provide a quick overview of the importance of sustainability in the F&B industry. We will then get a big picture of the online retail grocery landscape to understand a little bit what's going on there. We will talk about the different customer touch points in an online grocery store. We will also deep dive into strategies for reducing Scope 3 emissions. And finally, we will discuss the best practice for consumer communication and engagement. The topic of reducing Scope 3 emissions is absolutely a hot topic at the moment for retailers and brands. So I'm sure you will have a lot of questions coming during the discussion. So feel free to use the chat of the webinar. Just write your question at any time. And we will have a Q&A session at the end where we will have definitely time to answer some or all of those. Okay. So time to introduce our speakers. Marcus Linder is the founder and the CEO of Inoko. Inoko is a retail solution which enables retailers and F&B brands to assess and optimize the impact of thousands of products along the entire value chain. Maurice Berkens is the ex-CEO of Gokul Ate, a leading online grocery retailer with a strong focus on sustainability. So welcome to both of you. I'm super excited to have you. Before asking the first question, I just would like maybe to remind everyone about the importance of sustainability in the food sector. 70% of biodiversity loss on land is due to our food consumption. 34% of the global greenhouse gas emissions are also coming from our food consumption. And what we eat has major impact on our health. So it's literally impossible to talk about a net zero future without tackling emissions coming from our food consumptions. Talking about emissions, greenhouse gas emissions are divided into three categories. We have the Scope 1 emissions, which are direct emissions caused by a retailer or a company, such as the emissions to operate the store or the office. We have Scope 2 emissions, which are caused indirectly by a company. For example, the emissions produced to generate electricity for a store or a warehouse. And we have Scope 3 emissions that are not produced by the company itself, but rather those produced by suppliers and after the product has been sold, such as the disposal of a plastic bottle from a soft drink company. And those Scope 3 emissions, they account for 90% of all emissions coming from the food and beverage sectors. So it's basically the central piece in the decarbonization strategy of grocery retailers. And that's why today we have decided to really focus on how to reduce those Scope 3 emissions. So without any further ado, and with those numbers in mind, I would like to ask the first question to Maurice. So Maurice, can you help us understand the current landscape in the online grocery retail industry? What is the state of sustainability? What are the trends and also the challenge that you're seeing?
Yeah, good. First of all, thank you very much for having me here today. I think before we zoom in, I would initially start with what are these players? I think we hear a lot around quick commerce. We also hear this term new retail. Then we talk about pure players. So I would first initially start with brick and mortar traditional supermarkets. Brick and mortar initially were physical stores. Physical stores at one point of time needed to digitalize and actually became omni-channel, as it's called very often as well. And they basically have nothing else than a physical store as well as an online presence. And this is what you actually see in new retail. in new retail, you actually have a combination of both, so physical store as well as online presence. And then you have the pure players, and one of these pure players was already mentioned, Gurko AT, but there's many pure players in the Austrian market, and these pure players have a lot of benefits in sense of they're purely focused on digital. So they have lots of data, and they could be the first movers in actually focusing on this scope 3 emissions. And then you have quick commerce. And what is quick commerce? Quick commerce actually does this delivery of groceries, basically under an hour. You see very often your groceries now delivered in 15, 20, 30 minutes, with a lot of question marks around sustainability in that particular model, but I will go a bit deeper on that a bit later on. So what we have seen, particularly over the last 2 years, is that these consumer expectations have changed. People wanted to have it while being at home, therefore pushing this e-commerce in this traditional, I would say, out of the box thinking, hyper growth, and traditional businesses needed to react very quickly in order to stay on top, because customers just had very different expectations. So what we have seen is that even some of the pure players needed to scale, but we also saw a lot of new retail pushing, particularly in the e-commerce space, and getting online shops ready. Now, after the biggest waves, I would say, of Corona, many consumers still have accustomed to getting what they want, getting it quick, and having also more choices. More choices around multiple packaging solutions or quality. And then on the delivery end, you can actually now say, okay, do I want to have this in an hour delivered? Do I want to have this in 30 minutes? Or do I want to have this in a few hours, same day delivery or next day delivery? And then you can even tweak with certain players in terms of delivery slots. So it's a very different space now than it was 2 years ago. This digitalization is accelerating. Therefore, we will see complete change. I don't think that this has done, particularly in Austria, where we have the highest density of supermarkets in Europe. So this online space will change also this physical space, but nevertheless, even pure, I would say, brick and mortar stores as we know them will move continuously into this new retail. If we then go to the next part, so what is actually what we currently see? And this is mainly from the angle of heavy focus during this Corona time, plus what we currently see 2023 with the challenges that we see in the economic climate. So on one hand, this is local sourcing. Local sourcing has been out there the last 10, 15 years, but local sourcing is local sourcing, local. What is this distance? What is the travel distance of a product? And what we actually currently see that if you look at Vienna, you draw a circle around this, then you're looking at 25 to 35 kilometer, where this really local sourcing is taking place. So that is one of the key things where there is far more focus on, as well as focusing on having it local, but B, also where is it then coming from? So is this local farmer really producing organic as we think they are? So there is far more focus on the production behind this as well. Reduction of food waste. I think also here a topic which has been very much out there. In my time in Gurko, we have seen that we really heavily reduced this, even close to the 1% of sales, which is tremendous in comparison to brick and mortar stores. Focus on reusable bags. I think this has been generally out there as a concept, not only in the online, but also in the offline space. Collection of deposits, and I think the deposits topic is very, very interesting, better known in German as Pfand. We have seen this on glass bottles, but now, of course, the plastic topples coming, as well as the metal tins. So there is a lot happening in this space as well. Generally, plastic reduction in the sense of packaging, particularly in the space of fruit and vegetables, where we actually see that things are far more often in open boxes delivered from the field to the different outlets. Then a high share of organic products. This particularly my time from Gurgle surprised me a lot, where traditional retail actually kicked this off several years ago, and Austria is there definitely a front runner in Europe. But then in the online space, with having this data of what customers want, this was through product request very often requested, particularly in fruit and veg, but also in other categories. And there you can see easily you can reach 20 to 25% overall organic sales. Waste collection, yeah, so taking from batteries back, plastic back, the entire supply chain of waste management is very interesting topic as such. Then you have the topic of delivery, yeah, and I think delivery and particularly last mile is a really interesting topic. Yeah, when is a route really sustainable, from a financial side, yeah, but also when does it still actually make sense to start the delivery? And there is many theories around that, many different views on that as well. But I think what is crucial is that end of the day, you need to really condense it. Of course, it then depends, do you deliver it with bicycles or with e-cars or normal cars, and what are your thoughts behind this? And again, in the days that I worked for Gurkle, we took a really conscious decision to drive, for example, with gas cars plus electro, because it very much depends on the range of the car where it still is actually feasible, financially feasible to do, but also the number of deliveries that you can then do. And then, of course, as you can see here as well, is the topic of e-fleet, yeah, because e-fleet is very much related to range, but then also where is actually the electricity coming from that goes into the car? Yeah, if that is not green energy, does it still all make sense? Yeah. So there's a lot of things that you need to consider before you really can tick a lot of the boxes and say, my last mile is really sustainable and it really makes sense to put that to full scale. Crucial as well, and I mentioned this briefly already in the local sourcing, is this changing criteria for selecting suppliers. There was a really long time where it was all about product price, then you had product price and story, yeah, so then it became very much a marketing hype from Instagram to TikTok and everything that was out there. But what has changed very much is actually to understand, so how is it really produced, and how do you then audit this? And I think there are many labels, particularly also in the Austrian market. There are many labels that are already out there, and I think we need to still simplify this, particularly going forward, to understand this from a consumer point of view. I think it's still very early days in this space, but selecting a supplier needs to be done very consciously, data driven. And crucial there also is to understand and audit the processes that are happening behind the scenes. Yeah, and that can be from the ultra fresh category, so meaning fish, meat, fruit, and vegetables, and so on. And I think that is still fairly easy. But then, particularly in the other dry categories, where are the individual ingredients coming from? Where are they sourced? How are they sourced? What is the supply chain behind? I think is really interesting. And last one is exclusive brands. Also here you see that, particularly in the online space, everybody wants to have a certain brand. Yeah, in the case of Gurkle, we worked very much, for example, with the Eufel bakery chain. And everybody basically wants to have their bread or their meat sourced here and there. But I think the key thing is, again, what are the philosophies of those companies? Why do you work with them? What's behind? I think that is far more challenged now than it was several years ago. Challenges also in the space, lack of know-how, how to really reduce the CO2 impact. I think very often I hear, where do we actually start? I mean, we are still startup or scale up. We don't have the resources. So I think this is something that we will look at today, what you can actually do. Last mile planning, as I mentioned before, is this bikes, e-cars, how are they then charged? Is this a completely separate topic? Generally high energy consumption that you have by putting fulfillment centers in place. Yeah, and therefore, again, also to challenge particularly this quick commerce with multiple hubs in the city. How do you deal with this? And last but not least, also, of course, the increase of labor costs, which put, again, more pressure very often on sustainability as a topic. because then the cost factor comes again into play.
Thank you, Maurice, for this extensive summary. Thank you for summarizing the trends and the challenges. I love your example about the last mile. Is it really sustainable? Is the energy used for the last mile really sustainable? I think the topic is super complex, and I already see some questions popping up. So I think that the webinar is going to be super exciting. However, we know that the last mile delivery is often not the most important impact when we talk about emissions, and instead the product emissions, or the so-called scope 3 emissions, as we discussed before, are the ones that we should consider here. So Marcus, next question goes for you. Most customers don't know about the impact chains from production until the product arrives at the consumer. So what are the main steps to be considered in an impact assessment of a product? And could you maybe give us a specific example and explain us a little bit what are the different steps in an impact assessment?
Yes, absolutely. Also, hello from my side. Excited to be part of this webinar today. I think it's very obvious that lots of consumers, when they think about the impact of products, they think about the packaging, the plastic, they think about transport. But what most of consumers don't know is that actually the largest part of the impact of the products that we buy at a supermarket every day, or that we get delivered from e-grocery players every day, really lies within the product, so at the agriculture stage. And we as Enoco, we perform basically life cycle assessments at scale for thousands and tens of thousands of food and beverage products, for grocery retailers, for food and beverage brands. And what we again and again see when we assess those products, and we brought along one example here, which is a hummus. What you can see here is that we assessed the product carbon footprint of the hummus. So you see this hummus has 2.4 kilogram CO2 equivalent per kilogram of produce. And in this emission breakdown, this basically exactly answers your question, which is, okay, where do the emissions actually come from? And here you can see that actually for this hummus, despite the fact that it's packed in plastic, where many consumers would think, oh, this is really where the impact comes from, it's the plastic. No, the impact really primarily comes from agriculture. And here, no, it's not only the tractors that burn the fuel while working on the field, but it's also to a very significant amount the land use change. So whenever deforestation is happening in a certain country for the produce of a certain raw ingredient, we need to factor that into the life cycle assessment for this product. After the agriculture stage, we obviously factor in the production stage. So this is the electricity mix or the energy mix in general for producing the product, as well as obviously also the packaging, which you can see here only covers a very small part of the overall impact. Also the transportation stage is quite minimal, and storage. And then you would also usually have here included then after the storage stage, the retail stage. So these are the emissions that are caused by cooling the product at the grocery retail store, for example. And we also, depending on who is the target of the CO2 footprint that we communicate, we also in some cases include the consumer use stage and the disposal stage. So what emissions are involved in the preparation of the product. So for example, if you need to cool a product at home, or if you need to cook it, then what are the emissions caused by that, and so on. And one really interesting thing that our software provides on a per product level, but also on a per supplier level or per category level, are the emission spotlights. And the emission spotlights point out where do the emissions come from the perspective of ingredients and processes involved in the production of this process. So we were really super surprised recently when we did an assessment of a hummus actually for a leading grocery retailer, and the hummus had a higher CO2 footprint than chicken. and we were kind of, oh, what's going on? Something needs to be wrong with our technology. But as a matter of fact, the sesame seeds that were within the hummus originated from a country where a lot of land conversion, a lot of deforestation is going on for the production of sesame seeds. So consequently, our technology obviously takes it into account. And yeah, therefore, in the end, the impact of that hummus was very, very high. And this was a key learning, obviously, for our customer, that when it comes to their hummus products, it's really important to talk to their suppliers about where do the sesame seeds come from, and what can we do to get those sesame seeds from suppliers that are certified to be deforestation free. What can we do to maybe get them from a different country where we do not have that risk? What we also see on that slide, just for the sake of completeness, is that we at Inoco do not only assess products on the carbon impact, but we also look at what's the impact from a social perspective, or what's the impact from an animal welfare perspective, what's the impact from a nutrition perspective. And here we rate products, also like in climate, from A to E, thereby enabling the consumer, who can learn more about that through our product impact label here, about the impact of the product, but also the buyers within the grocery retailers can do what Maurice mentioned earlier in his example, which is really assessing the suppliers and their products before products are even being listed at the retail store based on those assessments. But we can also basically generate other labels like the Eco-score, the Nutri-score, and we even provide so-called impact insights. Those are then qualitative insights into why a product is good from a climate perspective, social fairness perspective, biodiversity perspective, and so on. So I think this is a brief introduction into what happens along the supply chain, and why a huge chunk of the emissions of grocery retailers really arise upstream from their suppliers, and why it's so important to tackle them.
Thank you, Marcus. It's amazing to see that the majority of emissions actually come before the product even hits the shelf. And I was quite impressed by your example of the hummus and the sesame seeds. So it's not because it's vegetarian that it's always good. So it's really, you need to have a profound and deep product assessment to really understand if a product is good or
But we need to say overall vegetarian products
is better. Yeah, but they are,
yeah.
it's really a complex topic.
Yeah.
So Maurice, what are the difference in consumer purchasing behavior between offline and online?
So I think the key thing initially comes very much down to demand planning. Yeah, particularly if we look at the production in Europe, there's a heavy overproduction. And particularly in the online space, there is far more data driven by AI that can actually do proper demand planning. So therefore, a farmer would produce 30, 40% perhaps less, but it's really possible by really planning far ahead and working directly with the producers to make that happen. If I look at Carlos, the category manager for fruit and vegetables for Gurkel, he worked already last August for the harvesting plan for 2023 with multiple farmers. And that's possible if you really know what is the volume, where is this leading to, so that the overproduction actually is being killed. So that I think the high accuracy in demand planning is crucial in this. Then sourcing, of course. So again, understanding the selection process. Again, what is the biggest difference there is in a physical store, every facing that you see, and you have to imagine a facing is every product that you look at is a single facing. And each facing is basically sold. Yeah, and these are huge prices that are normally paid by producers. But in the online space, you don't have that. So you have very different criteria for which you can actually list a product. And I think this in the online space, you see far more trial and error. That is one, but you can also very much question where's this coming from and does it actually fit for what we stand for? Because you don't have that pressure to collecting that income that you normally would collect. Then also live customer feedback, knowing your customers. I mean, there's multiple channels that you can collect feedback from, but how does this all funnel together, and how does this then end up with the person in charge? This is what online space is all about, and directly replying to customers. And I had a team of 15 people in customer care, but very often I was directly answering emails myself directly with customers, because you have this interaction, which in a traditional brick and mortar store you don't have. Then also this customer shopping behavior. How often is a customer coming? What is he or she buying? What are maybe alternative products that you could propose in order to reduce the CO2 impact? And I think that behavior of a customer, the shopping frequency. So how often do you actually put items in a basket or in the app? How do you use the app? How much time do you spend on the app? How long do you take on average to put the items in? How long does it take your shopping? All that data is actually in the online space known, and you can actually really make cool proposals to change that and to change the shopping behavior of a customer. And then, of course, also the interaction with the customer. So from push to the entire online space to particular groups where we used to test new products with or changes in price strategy or in sustainable topics. And I think those 5 areas are actually the ones that are really different than the traditional brick and mortar supermarket as you and I know it around the corner. And I believe that is also the huge opportunity that these players have to lead into the sustainability. They can be really the front runners, the door openers, and guide then also the consumers in a healthier direction.
Thank you, Maurice. I'm sure that our audience is quite digital savvy, so they can totally relate to what you were saying, especially the customer shopping behavior. I'm a big fan of Gawker, so I when you talk about the basket and the suggestion, I know exactly what you're referring to. Marcus, so we've just heard now a little bit about those differences. How can we best integrate sustainability triggers along the customer journey in a physical versus an online store? How could we embed some sustainability?
Yeah, I think at the physical store, a key element, although it's just the tip of the iceberg, can be a label, like impact label, food impact label. So here, for example, you would see that grocery retailers can, especially onto their white label brands, print a product impact label, such as our Enoco product impact assessment label, that educates consumers about the impact of products. So we usually reduce the dimensions that we have to the 3 most important dimensions per category. We also usually include a QR code, which then allows you as a consumer to basically scan the QR code, get to the product detail page, or into the app of the retailer, where you would now find more information about the additional impact dimensions. So not only how is the product doing from a climate, from a social fairness, from a nutrition perspective, but also how is it doing, for example, from an animal welfare perspective, in case there are animal-based products involved. But on that product detail page, you can then also find why a product is more sustainable. So what we really learned at Enoco is it's not enough to just educate consumers that a product is more or less sustainable, but you really also need to give them the whys. So what am I doing better? Or why is this product better for me as a consumer? Why is this product better for animal? Why is this product better for the climate? And this is what we do with so-called impact insights. Those are basically qualitative descriptions like, hey, how much space did this chicken have? Or did this chicken see the daylight? Or was this chicken for sure not fed with soy originating from the Amazon rainforest? But we can also recommend more sustainable alternatives. So I think the label is here just the initial tip of the iceberg that can help to really drive the consumption into a more sustainable and more healthy direction. But it's not enough. You really need to follow up with those whys and with also alternatives, that you actively recommend alternatives from the assortment so that consumers know what they should better go for, and also understand here why those products are better choice.
Yeah, I think it's super important to have also qualitative insights, because majority of us, we just don't understand sometimes what's behind. So having quick explanation is definitely helpful. Do you have, Marcus, maybe an example of a live customer that recently implemented product assessment online?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our customers, for example, Sunflower Family, it's a brand in the meat substitute space. They produce meat substitute products out of sunflower, as you might imagine. And what they're actually doing is they are communicating their product impact assessment label to consumers here, for example, on the product detail page of the website. But they also provide you with those impact insights on their homepage, on their website. So whenever you go to the product detail page, you find the label, which gives you a good high-level understanding of how sustainable the product is. But it then also allows you to dive deeper and to really see, okay, how is the product performing on climate, on animal welfare, on social, on nutrition? What are the benefits? But also, what are still the shortcomings of a product? So what a lot of statistics show and a lot of research has shown is that consumers don't expect you to be perfect, but as soon as you start to be transparent, and as soon as you show that, not everything is perfect yet, that incredibly boosts the trust into the brand, that you're not just trying to, get your marketing blah, blah out there, but that you're really genuinely showing how your product is performing. And in this case, for example, Sunflower Family is procuring their raw ingredients or parts of the raw ingredients from a country where there is a certain risk for bad labor conditions, and therefore we had to rate this product here. Our technology rated this product here from a social fairness perspective with a C, which is average. And you can learn now as a consumer also what's behind it. And it was really complete news to our customer that, they kind of had those issues within their supply chain, and they are now tackling this challenge front on and really trying to work on that topic and trying to ensure that they can fix that problem. And as soon as they can share the information with our platform, that they have now, certified suppliers, or get their raw materials from a country with less risk in terms of labor right violations, this rating of the product will be updated here. Also, maybe another example was, but I mentioned it earlier already, this hummus that we assessed for a leading grocery retailer, who then realized that this hummus has a huge impact on the carbon side, because of the fact that the sesame seeds originate from a country with a lot of deforestation or land use change. So also here, you can see you can only really change and you can only improve once you know the details and once you know the issues that have within your products. And then you can get active, and then you can talk to your suppliers, to your partners, and then you can set stricter standards. You can reward your suppliers for really moving the needle on those challenges that you still have. And therefore, it's so important that food and beverage brands, as well as grocery retailers, are now getting increasingly very deep into understanding better what are the implications of their products, so that they then can take the next step and really try to make the product more sustainable time over time. And yeah, it's very exciting that we can play a large role here and help the food and beverage industry to really transition towards more sustainable products, as well as helping consumers to really make smarter, healthier, and more sustainable choices.
Thank you. Great to see that. Maurice, so we've just heard from Marcus some tips how to integrate sustainability trigger in your online customer journey. coming back to the scope 3 emissions, which is really like the core of the emissions, what are some other strategies that online grocery retailers can follow in order to reduce their scope 3 emissions?
So I think the most important thing, as I mentioned earlier, is actually the supplier selection, and not only taking a supplier that sounds sustainable, but I mean really going with a quality assurance team in the field, doing the audits, using a platform as Inoco as a tool to simplify a lot of this. And I believe there's a lot to be done there. It's still very, very early stage where we currently are. The change will need to come. And the question then, of course, is this coming from the retail end, online and offline, or is this something, as Mark had mentioned, the F&B industry, or even producers and so on, FMCG? For me, what is crucial is that in the end of the day, it needs to come from both ends. It's very clear that the supplier selection and the audits that needs to happen are based on data. So your data management needs to be in order. You need to understand where is what happening in the supply chain, and that does not stop with basically going to the supplier and finding out how they do it, but also then understanding where are the raw ingredients coming from, and understanding the impact of the production of those raw ingredients. So I think this is really crucial. I'm supporting for multiple years already the bakery Öffel in Vienna, and we had lots of discussion with Georg. How do we actually make sure that the grains that we want to have, varieties that no longer exist, are really coming to us in such a manner, knowing where they're coming from, knowing that they produce just for us. So it's again understanding your demands, it's understanding how is it grown, under which type of condition is it grown, but then also, of course, the logistics part. And then I think the last and probably most difficult part will be the information for the consumer, because as I mentioned earlier, there are tons of labels out there. Everybody loves their labels, but how are we gonna simplify this so that the consumer that buys online in the app or in the offline space in a physical store actually knows what they're buying and where is it coming from and their impact on the world that we are living in? And I think here, Inoco is a great first platform, and I'm really great to be part of this journey. But we definitely need to see this on a far higher level, Europe-wide, in order to make sure that this is gonna really leave a good print, where consumers in multiple languages understand what they're buying and reducing the impact that they're having.
Yeah, totally agree, Maurice, on the need of really expanding transparency, not only on a few products in a few countries. It has to be, and not only in the food and beverage industry, it has to be also across industries, fashion, cosmetic, and everything. So thank you for sharing this. I see that a lot of strategies are such as supplier selection and audits or logistic. They are actually focusing on the upstreams emissions. Marcus, is there a way to tackle the downstreams emissions? So basically, is there a way to engage with end consumer and raise awareness about sustainable behaviors and choices?
Yes, absolutely. And that's so crucial, because let's face it, if we all continue to, consume the massive amount of meat, the massive amount of animal products that an average consumer consumes today, we are never ever going to achieve the climate goals as a society, and none of the retailers will be able to achieve their own ambitious targets here. So really driving behavioral change and supporting consumers on their way towards a healthier and more sustainable nutrition is really key. And some of you might know that we as Inoco actually started out with a consumer app. So we launched an app in Austria that allows you to scan the grocery receipts of 3 of the largest grocery retailers in Austria. And consequently, you see how sustainable was my basket overall, or what was the carbon footprint of my basket overall, and how does the carbon footprint do in contrast to the calories that I purchased. So if you scan those receipts, you basically will see that you either get a 50% ticket, a 100% ticket, or a 200% ticket, depending on how climate friendly your purchase was. And consequently, you can then win back 50 to 200% of your monthly grocery purchase that you scanned with the Inoco app. And below, you then also on the first screen would see what's the impact of those different products that you purchased. Here we still use category-based data at the moment, but you still get a good rough indication of how climate friendly, what's the climate impact of that product. But you can then also dig deeper. You can just click onto those products. You will find more sustainable alternatives recommended to you. You will find, again, those impact insights that educate you about the good stuff, but also the bad stuff with regards to the product. Just share interesting insights. Obviously, you can also scan products by scanning the EIN code. And what we're doing then is really launching challenges. So for example, we launch challenges like, hey, why don't you purchase and scan 2 plant-based milk products this month and try whether your muesli tastes as great as with conventional milk. And for those consumers, or for those Inoco users who did so, where we basically then identified on the receipts which they scanned, that they purchased those plant-based milk alternatives, we reward them. We reward them, for example, with vouchers for more sustainable sustainable food and beverage products, and so on. So I think consumer communication can only be the tip of the iceberg. So adding a label provides the baseline, but what's really crucial then is that you leverage content, that you leverage gamification, that you leverage nudging to really step-by-step guide consumers towards a more sustainable and healthier nutrition. So for example, at the point of sales, grocery retailers can launch a white label or a co-branded solution with us, which they can advertise in front of their stores, where in front of the store you would find a QR code that guides you into either the retailer's app or a white label web app, which now allows you to scan any product available at the store, and where consequently you get to the product detail page where you see what's the impact and the impact insights, more sustainable alternatives, and much more. But what we also recently, actually last week, showcased in Düsseldorf together with Toshiba is how you can get that information on the receipt. So basically there you could scan products and ultimately once you paid, you got a climate score onto your grocery receipt. So you saw, okay, how climate friendly was your purchase, or what was the most climate friendly purchased product? What was the least climate friendly purchased product? So you really over time get more insights into, okay, what is actually good for the climate, what's not so good for the climate. And that can be done in a similar way for other topics such as animal welfare, such as health, nutrition, and so on. And obviously you can then also leverage content either through in-app push notifications where you congrat consumers and say, hey, well done, this was a very climate-friendly purchase. By the way, in comparison to last month, you reduced your carbon emissions by X% overall with your purchases here with us. Go on like this, we will reward you, you will get extra points, and so on and so on. So retailers really have the very unique opportunity to become the partner, the personal coach that allows consumers to step-by-step transition towards their targets, which they have set themselves. And I think the cool thing about digital technologies is that you can do that in a very personalized way, because not every consumer is the same. Not every consumer cares about climate, but maybe some consumers care about their own health and thereby at the same time will automatically transition to a more environmental friendly basically purchase or diet, or some care about animal welfare. So you can really use the information that you have about your consumers, can use the information that you have about your products, about their environmental impact, about their health benefits, about their allergens and so on, and really step by step help consumers in their transition. And that's a huge opportunity for the entire grocery retail space to really no longer just focus on offering the right product at the right price at the right place, but to rather really put yourself into the shoes of a consumer, think about what do they really want, and offering a solution to the overarching problem which they're trying to basically solve, which is, okay, how am I going to feed my family in a healthy, in a sustainable, in an affordable way? And this is a huge opportunity that really requires retailers to have a profound understanding of their products, of their consumers, build a digital twin of the consumers, of the products, and then really, take it from there.
Great. I think we come to an end on the discussion, but the good news is we have a lot of questions. So thank you both. To anyone in the audience, if you have any question, you can just feel free to reach out directly to our speakers. I'm gonna then select some questions and try to assign them to who I think is the most able to answer. So the first one was, local sourcing, are they verification certificates that the farmers are organic? Maybe Maurice, you know about this?
I mean, there's definitely multiple certificates out there. Yeah, I mean, from standard organic certification, but I believe the certification alone will not cover what we are covering here today. Yeah, I mean, to identify that a company is producing organically or has Demeter quality and so on, I think is great. It's a first really good step. But we need to really then also understand where are the ingredients coming from if they're really producing a final product. So I think it's a first step in the direction. There is tons of certification out there. But when it really comes down to CO2 footprints, there's still lots to do.
Thanks. We also had some direct questions, so I'll try to combine these two about data. I mean, data is such an important topic. So thank you, Lou, for asking the question. How is the energy consumption tracked? Does the data get tracked? And also we had here, does the LCA take into account renewable energy? So maybe Marcus, you know a little bit about data, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yeah, very good question. And maybe I need to explain how the methodology works. So basically, NoCo, our software is built in a way so that you can do a first product impact assessment estimate purely based on the public data that retailers already have today. So in the first step, we basically take the information that you would find on the products, like the ingredients, like the nutrient information, the labels, and based on that, we have an AI-powered technology that allows us to really understand what's the composition of the product. So how much wheat is in a ready-made pizza, how much tomato, how much tuna, and then we can apply, depending on who again is the audience, either average data sets or average carbon values to those ingredients as well as to the processes involved. So we know that for baking, like a ready-made pizza, there is industrial baking involved, there is industrial cooling involved, and we have a good understanding what the average, energy need is for those kind of processes. But then in a second step, retailers can give us access to their private label brand database, where we usually get additional information such as what's the country of origin of the ingredients, what's the exact composition of the product, which again now allows us to replace those assumptions that we had to take in the first step, and those are usually conservative assumptions, by the real data, so by the real primary data in parentheses, which allows us to basically replace those conservative assumptions by real data. And in the third step, we have a software as a service platform where suppliers can now directly go in and share even more data about their products. And this would be the place where they can share that their production uses green energy, or where they can share how much energy they use per kilogram of produce, or where they can share whether their raw ingredients are sourced from a location that's like from a farmer that is deforestation free certified. So you really need to see that in those steps. Don't expect all your suppliers to immediately provide you with tons and tons of data, but we basically have a methodology in place that allows us to get started purely based on the public data that you as a grocery retailer have. Then in the next step, bring in the private label brand data. And then due to the fact that we use those conservative assumptions for everything where we don't know what's exactly in there and what's used, we have an incentive built in for the producers to over time provide us with more and more data. Because basically every producer understands, okay, the more data I provide, usually the lower the impact of my product, the higher my chances that I can really compete on this new competitive battlefield, which is basically sustainability. Long answer to a short question, but I hope that made sense.
It does. It does. Right. We just had a question on supplier transparency, but it disappeared. It's fine. Maurice, how can grocery retailers balance the need for sustainability with the need for convenience and affordability for customers, especially nowadays with high inflation? We really get into a little bit of a balancing act. So what do you think?
I think the crucial part there is you have basically two areas. I think one area you can say, I look at private label, and Marcus mentioned this already on a few occasions. Private label, when done correctly, and you track the ingredients, can be really produced in a sustainable manner. Then when looking at packaging, logistics, and so on, this will definitely not increase the price automatically. But what I think is crucial is that we look particularly at the overproduction at the early stage, because when we get rid of this overproduction that happens in many cases, this is all on top. So I think crucial will be data. I think that's absolutely crucial. Planning the demand, that's the second part. But then if we look to branded products, I think here the crucial part is that the industry needs to understand that this is not optional. This will be the new standard. This is the only way forward. And as everybody understands where the products are coming from and the consumer sees the impact from large manufacturers, this will increase volume automatically, and therefore prices will be fair for everybody. So I think, yes, consumer behavior is changing. Yes, people are getting more conscious about this. The question now, of course, is who will lead? Is this the retailer or is this the producer, or do they really work together hand in hand?
Difficult question. Thank you. We have a next one, I think could go to both of you. So what are, in your opinion, the most needed information customers want to have about their product or their service that would really help them to reduce consumption and emissions? So what are the most important information to share? Maybe Marcus has an idea, and you, Maurice, certainly, maybe you can complete. I would be interested to hear both of you.
I think what's a key learning, again, I mentioned already a little bit earlier, is that no consumer is the same. And there is not, the consumers who care about sustainability. That's a myth. But there are consumers out there who really care about animal welfare, or there are consumers out there who really care about social issues, or there are consumers out there who care about climate. And what we see is really crucial, therefore, is that we do not just focus now the whole discussion around climate only, because let's face it, unfortunately, for a very large amount of consumers out there, the connotation that food has a huge impact on climate is not there yet. So many consumers are not aware of this topic yet. And on the other hand, by only looking at climate impact of food, that would also have some very unintended side consequences, like that, for example, mass factory animal meat is frequently more climate friendly than the organic offers, because, for example, organically raised animals live longer because they take way more time until they've reached the weight until they can be really slaughtered, and that's why they also can obviously emit more greenhouse gas emissions during that time. So I think it's really key that we do not make the mistake to only focus on carbon. Carbon has to be a core element in the discussion, has to be always on the table, but we really need to address that topic, multidimensionality, because that's a huge opportunity to really get consumers interested. Because if you just talk about climate, the large amount of consumers who doesn't really understand the climate implication of food yet will not listen. But if you also at the same time provide them insights into the animal welfare side, social side, nutrition side, you will trigger them to want to know more. And this is then an opportunity to also engage with them around the climate impact, climate topic and climate impact of food, which is really important.
Maurice, anything to complement about
No,
this?
fully see it in the same way. I would just add that simplification on the shelf, in the app, on the product would make it for a consumer far easier to understand. And I think the topic of label and how does this label look and do we really understand what's behind? Yeah, I mean, from in the same matter, pretty much like how eggs are being produced, yeah, from organic to mass production and so on. I think we need to basically make everybody aware. And I mean, I have two small kids and they open the box and they see the 0 and they know straight away what is behind. But does everybody know? Yeah. And I think here we still have a lot of education to do, and communication will be crucial.
Yes. We have 3 minutes left, so just one more questions, and then we will stop. So how do you, and this is a question for Marcus, he will be very happy. How do you measure impact of your consumer app? Do you have any examples available?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're getting lots of positive feedback here where consumers are really telling us that they learn a lot about their purchasing behavior, about the impact of their choices. And yeah, it's absolutely cool to really see that we can really have an impact in practice. But we definitely need to do more to look into actually how do we shift behavior based on actual purchasing behavior. But as we are very, very busy with our B2B side of things at the moment, the app doesn't get the attention that it would deserve at the moment.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you for your very interesting question. Thank you, Maurice. Thank you, Marcus, for the insights, and looking forward already for the next webinar. I wish you a very good end of afternoon. Bye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.